Hey, the revolution will be televised. What's up? It's the Culture Detective here, investigating your favorite albums. And today I'm going to be doing another mini album reviews, because why not? Actually, this will be my last mini album reviews video before I do my DSEs, which means that you will not be able to see any more mini album reviews videos, or actually any more TV review videos, or movie review videos, or me around the world videos, or any things videos, or any memes videos from now on until the end of April or early May. So, this is the last. And as always, I will be talking about some albums released in 2020, very recently, just a couple weeks ago. And in case you're wondering, I'll be talking about the Lil Uzi Vert album tomorrow. But before I talk about the 5 albums, I also want to take some time to talk about the Gil-Scott, Heron, and Makaya McCraven album, collaboration album, We're New Again, a reimagining by Makaya McCraven. And basically, Makaya McCraven, a jazz musician, a new jazz, experimental jazz spoken word musician, team up with another new jazz veteran, that is Gil-Scott Heron. They sort of collaborate to reimagine the last Gil-Scott Heron record, I'm New Here, and sort of reimagine it and add some new songs, deconstruct a new song, deconstruct some old songs, and it's just okay. The fact that a lot of the songs are deconstructed just makes this album less cohesive, less potent, and there are some really nice updated moments on this album, but overall, it's just okay, not really all that impressive. If I have to give this album a rating, I would probably give it a light 6 out of 10. So, starting off, we have the latest BTS album, Map of the Soul 7. So, BTS, probably the most famous group of singers, rappers, and songwriters, and multi-instrumentalists in South Korea right now, has tons and tons of teen girl fans across the world, and is pretty infamous because they have a pretty notorious fan base. And if I give this album a negative score, I'm pretty sure that a portion of that fan base will leave some very nice comments in this video as well. Starting off, I would just like to say that this album is overproduced. This album sounds like a collection of melodramatic, epic movie trailer music that is overly bright and loud and layered without any personality or whatsoever. Pretty much the prime characteristic of all the mainstream K-pop. And I'm not saying that all the K-pop in the world is trash, but why does it always have to be so overproduced and bloated on this album? This album is 60 minutes long, and it feels like 3 hours long. It has 19 or 20 tracks, I think. It's really long. It's giving me fatigue as I'm listening to the album. But this album started off really strongly, though. We have the intro track, Personal, which is a pretty fun, bright, sharp rap song, not to a point where it's overproduced. The rapping is pretty charismatic and a little exciting and energetic, which is really nice. The next track, Boy With Love featuring Halsey, is way better than I've expected. It's really not that bad. The beat is groovy, the instrumentals are kind of sweet, the hooks are actually kind of catchy, and Halsey kind of fits in the song, which is a good thing. The third track, Make It Right, is just okay. The instrumentals, the singing, the hooks, they're just okay. The instrumentals actually isn't just okay. It's not really that good. The annoying keyboards are a little cliche and a little trite. The next track, Jamais Vu, is a light trap piano ballad. You know, people should start categorizing music like this as K-trap, because now they're beyond K-pop. It's just K-trap now. But yeah, light trap piano ballad, and we got some rough melodramatic performances, which is a little awkward. The next track, Dionysus, has a lot of energy, which I appreciate. I'm appreciating the level of energy injected in the track. And this track is essentially this loud, overproduced pop rock track, and halfway through the track we get this hook, cha-cha-cha-cha, cha-cha-cha-cha. It's really annoying, I have to say. The interlude after that is the Shadow interlude, and it's a pretty tedious interlude. Almost sounds like a Travis Scott ripoff with its constant auto-tune croonings. And the next track, Black Swan, is basically this basic, generic, moody trap pop song that offers nothing flavorful. And in the context of the full album, given that there are so many trap songs on this LP, this track really doesn't stand out at all. We have the track Filter, which I actually kind of like. It's basically this acoustic reggaeton slash pop song with some slick vocals provided by Jimin. Yeah, actually, his vocals are way better than I've expected, which is really cool. And this song is about filters. It's a pretty nice song about, you know, love. And I initially thought that this song is about filters, in that because this girl exists and this guy loves this girl, so this guy started to act more appropriately. And this song is about filters. But it's a good song. It's a good song. This song is actually about, you know, Instagram filters. Like it's referencing that anyways. In some ways, I don't know. We have the track My Time, which is this trap pop song, which is incredibly bright, squeaky clean, and it just ends up sounding very insipid and boring. The next track, Louder Than Bombs, is also not a great song at all. Given how melodramatic the production is, it doesn't have to be this epic. The vocal processing on this track is a little obnoxious, to be honest. It's a little too much, actually. And we also have the next track, On, which sonically and instrumentally is not bad, but the vocals, they're tedious. They're very overly produced again, and I think originally the track On features Sia. Did they cut off Sia? Did they do that? Because that's a shitty move. We have the next track, Ugh! Exclamation mark, which is basically this Korean rap banger with Suga, J-Hope, and Rap Monster giving these really high energy, exciting flows. And even though I appreciate the energy and I like the beat, I think it's okay, I still think this track is just a banger, and that's pretty much the extent of it. There's nothing all that special or outstanding about this track. We have the track 0 O'Clock, 00:00, and the singing is actually really good. The hook is really nice. I also really like the airy harmonies on this track, which is quite catchy and breezy. The next track, Inner Child, is a straight up movie trailer song, and this song actually reminds me a lot of those, you know, emotional, moving insurance ads, and not in a good way. And we also have the track Friends, which is basically this middle of the road shouty pop rap track. The track Moon is also not that great. I do kind of like the driving instrumentals. The pop rock performances are just okay, but in comparison to other pop rock songs on this project, I think this is one of the more coherent ones. And then we have the track Respect, which is also a high energy trap rap song with some funky keyboards, and it's just okay. The auto-tune croonings just don't help at all, and lyrically there really isn't anything all that special. The next track, We Are Bulletproof, The Eternal, is also an interlude, and the production is so bright and so overproduced. It's kind of overwhelming, hard to bear. And the last track, the outro track, Ego, tries to be zany and multifaceted, and it's basically a dance pop rap song with a lot of fun performances. But at this point in the album, I already have zero interest in listening to more BTS because the album is just too bloated and too overproduced. So yeah, I'm not enjoying this album, not really. Kinda feeling a strong 4 to a light 5 on this thing. My favorite track here is probably 0 o'clock, and my least favorite is Louder Than Bombs. The second album that I'm going to be talking about in this video is the latest Lil Baby album, My Turn. And no. This album, I'm gonna put it in one way. I'm gonna summarize the entire album. Generic trap rap. 3 words. Generic trap rap. And this album, it's 20 tracks long, and it's just packed. It's bloated with generic, average trap rap song with minimal trap instrumentals and trap beats, very low key and underwhelming auto-tune crooning performances, features that aren't that good, and it's like an hour and 10 minutes long, seriously. And yeah, not only do we get some really muttered vocals from Lil Baby, and the fact that Lil Baby's vocal range is really limited, but also he does these, you know, little vocal rip-offs. Everybody's saying that he sounds like a Young Thug clone, and in fact, it does sound like he's trying to sound like Young Thug, but his vocal range and eccentricity and talent is nowhere near Young Thug's. And on the Future track, called Live Off My Closet, he basically does a Future impression, and then Future hops onto the track, and it just sounds really awkward. I'm not gonna go through every single track on the entire album because that is pointless, because pretty much all of the songs on this album sound similar, but there are a couple of standout. We have the track Consistent, which has slightly more animated flows and slightly rawer vocals. The opening track, Get Ugly, has a slightly better instrumental than other tracks on the album. It sounds really epic, and not in a way it's overproduced or anything. But then the rest of the album is just really lackluster and underwhelming. We have the track We Should featuring Young Thug, and again, it just sounds awkward, as Lil Baby sounds like a Young Thug Pretend, and then we have Young Thug. And we also have tracks like Grace, which has some of the most incoherent vocals on the whole album. We have the track Emotionally Scarred, and I guess Lil Baby is trying to sing or rap about his scarred emotions. And I'm not judging his emotions or feelings or anything, but the way his vocals are so stale and stagnant and so liveless, the topic of the track is just not delivered at all. We have the track Forever, featuring Lil Wayne, which is also a very generic trap rap song, and the little marker in the beginning, I guess production marker, with this little girl saying, "Who made this beat? Twisted Genius, baby." I lulled listening to this part. And the track No Sucker is the absolute worst on the entire album. The whole song just sounds like one endless chorus. And a bulk of the tracks on this album is basically a very minimal sample being looped over and over and over again, with some really thin light trap beats and some really loud bass booms. Tracks like Heatin' Up, Whoa, Same Thing, which is of course the same thing. We got Some to Prove, Catch the Sun, and all these tracks are all pretty similar. And then we have the bass boosted crooning over some minimal beats. Tracks like How, Commercial, Forget That, which is a funny title because this track is pretty forgettable. Can't Explain, Solid, which is also a pretty funny track because this album is pretty much the opposite of Solid. Gang Signs, and Hurtin'. So yeah, overall, this album is really not good. It's a really boring album. It puts me to sleep. One thing that this album does better than the latest Gunna album is that the latest Gunna album just gives you migraines because every single song instrumentally is just a carbon copy of one another. But this one, there are slight differences, but it's so hard to notice. It's so subtle. It's kind of ridiculous. I'm kind of feeling a strong 2 to a light 3 on this album. My favorite track here is probably Get Ugly. My least favorite is No Sucker, probably. And then we have the third album, and that is King Krule's Man Alive. And, damn, this is one of actually the most despondent, dreary, and downright depressing albums I've heard all year so far. It's just very slow, it drags on, it slogs, but at the same time it doesn't feel very half-baked. The songs on this track feel solid, they feel instrumentally complete, and this is one of the better albums of the year so far as well. So, King Krule, Archie Marshall, singer-songwriter from the UK, he's back, and the album starts off with the track Cellular, which has some driving, punchy, minimal drums, a very deep bass, some sweet, swirly synths. It's a really sweet song, which is also somewhat euphoric, somewhat dreamy and relaxing, but also very ethereal and kind of sad in a way. And we have Archie Marshall going, "There's a French girl in the television," and it just gives this track a lot of style. The next track, Supermarché, is pretty nice track as well. It's a pretty moody, minimal, stark, post-punk track bordering on spoken word. The bass is very deep and dense, and then we get these dreary, reverby delays, and occasionally in the track the guitars, they sort of swell in a very anxious and urgent fashion, and we get these minimal climaxes which are amazing. And this track also feels very off-kiltered, which is really cool. The next track fits perfectly as the next track, Stoned Again, where Archie Marshall really screams, really freakishly screams over some distorted bass, and the whole song feels really bitter and condensed. We have the track Comet Phase with a speedier beat, also a very sort of scarce, angular, sour guitars over some sped up talking samples, and occasionally we get some very intense walls of sounds on the track. And I like this track overall as well. Really cool sonic palettes, some compelling performances, yet the dreary, depressing atmosphere is spot on. The next track, The Dream, is sort of an interlude with some looped pianos, and it's just okay, nothing all that cohesive. And the next track, Perfecto Miserable, feels kind of hollow, kind of washed down and mushy. We get some walls of sounds, which doesn't really do anything. However, I do really like the dreamy, heavy guitars, and the very soft vocals paired with it is really beautiful and nice. The next track, Alone, Omen 3, is also one of the better songs in the album. The sound plays really creative, and this song is so dreary and so stuck. Listening to this song, I can almost smell the, like, leaves. I can smell thick leaves, like I'm stuck in the middle of a very dead forest with thick, dense fog. And it's very dreary, foggy, lonely, isolated. I feel trapped and clustered, I guess. We have the track Slinky, which also serves very perfectly as the next track to Alone Omen 3. I really love the dreamy, woozy, wet guitars, and the ending is really disturbing, reminds me a lot of David Lynch's movies. And we have the track Airport Antenatal Airplane, which has some slowed down pitched vocals. The singing is kind of repetitive, a little aimless, and same goes for the next track, Don't Let the Dragon Drag On, which is a bit of a lull moment on the entire album. Instrumentally, it's pretty simplistic, pretty minimalistic, and the vocals are pretty quiet and uneventful. The next track, Theme for the Cross, is a nearly borderline ambient track. The first half is incredibly beautiful with its jazzy pianos and very deep bass. The second half sort of slows down in a very sluggish fashion with some car sounds driving by. But the last 3 songs on the album is really solid. We have the track Underclass, which is this jazzy, hazy ballad, incredibly mesmerizing and hypnotizing. We also have the track Energy Fleets, which sounds very dreamy, and the second half of the song, where the entire song just sonically falls apart, is really creative. The track Please Complete Thee is a really stark and depressing finish to the album. The vocals are absolutely lonely, and at the end we also get these drony, dense synths. And at the very end we get a layer of bright shimmery guitars, which is a bit weird, but still I think it's a pretty nice ending to the album overall. So yeah, I'm enjoying this album. I think I won't listen to this album because I want to relax or entertain myself. But when I'm in a very dreary, I don't know what to do, I don't know what the hell to do with my life mood, I would sort of listen to this album. Strong 7 to a light 8, and my favorite track here is Cellular, and my least favorite is Don't Let the Dragon Drag On. For the 4th album, I'm going to be talking about the latest Destroyer album, Have We Met. And I'm going to be honest here, this album is kinda disappointing in that I actually enjoyed quite a bit of Destroyer's music. The album Kaput is great. Kaput, and my personal favorite of his is of course Poison Season, which ended up in the honorable mentions and my top 100 albums of the decade list. But really, since then, I think his music has been getting more and more underwhelming and disappointing. Essentially, we get Have We Met, where we get 10 songs and every single song sound pretty similar. He plays really, really safe. Dan Behar being Destroyer. The instrumentals are the worst part about this album. It's incredibly awkward. Basically, it's this, sharper, but at the same time, little throwback synth pop rock instrumental, and it just doesn't fit with Dan's vocals at all. So I'm not going to go through every single track on this album, but I'm going to mention them one way or the other. The album starts off with Crimson Tide, which instrumentally is pretty good, but then again, it's super awkward when it's paired with his reverby, quiet vocals. The bass is thick, we get some nice electronic synths, but it still sounds very awkward. But I guess in retrospect, it's one of the better songs on the album. Tracks like Kinda Dark and University Hill are very quiet and minimalistic and very uneventful and kind of forgettable as well. The tracks Q Synthesizer and The Raven pretty much devoid of any structure whatsoever, especially for Q Synthesizer, where the chorus is literally Q Synthesizer, and then some synths started to play, Q guitars, and then some guitars started to play. It's almost as if Dan is running out of song ideas. The track It Just Doesn't Happen has some driving throwback synths, but then we get some reverby, quiet, fragile vocals that just don't fit at all. The track The Television Music Supervisor is muddled in reverb so severely, it's really hard to tell what's going on the track, and the title track is borderline ambient. And then we have the album ending Fool song, which is also borderline ambient, except Dan Behar sings La 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 on top of it, which is a really weird ending for the album. And the track The Man in the in Black's Blues is a really quiet song that is at the same time very, very forgettable, even more quiet than the aforementioned ballad tracks like Kinda Dark, which also had some smooth instrumentals that are very nice, but nothing really stands out. And I thought maybe it's because my taste for music has changed, but when I go back to, again, Poison Season or Kaput, especially Poison Season, tracks like Forces from Above has such fruity and eccentric and flavorful and tuneful instrumentals. In a way, it's very intricate, and the way it pairs with Dan's vocals are really refreshing. And I still enjoy Poison Season a lot. Not this album, though. Not this album. I don't think it's a terrible album. I don't think it's a good one either. I'm feeling a 5 on this thing, a 5 out of 10. My favorite track here is Crimson Tide. My least favorite, I don't even know. Maybe, I guess the last track, Full Song. It's kind of, yeah, the last track. And then we have the last album on the agenda, and that is the latest Loathe album. I let it in, and it took everything. And I stumbled upon this album while looking through rateyourmusic.org, because for multiple weeks this album has been at the #1 spot, so I decided to check it out, and I don't think it's that great. And now that if you look at the top albums from 2020 in Rate Your Music, you'll realize that the album ranking has dropped severely. I guess more people have been listening to it now and realizing that, hey, it's really not that great of an album. But basically, Loathe is an American metalcore / pop metal band, pop rock, but in a very gazy fashion, you know? And kind of reminds me of Deftones, in that Deftones also has a similar style with heavy metal, but then occasionally the hooks or the choruses or the bridges would be very hazy and washed out and stargazy, shoegazy, and very sugary and reverby. And I really like the metalcore moments on this album. They're raw, they're violent, they're aggressive, they're powerful, and then we get the hazy, sugary moments on the album, and I just don't care for those moments at all. We have the album intro and the track Aggressive Evolution, and Aggressive Evolution is like a half-half between the raw and violent metalcore and the pop, rock, reverby sounds. The verses are good, and the choruses took me a while for me to get into it, but I still think it's an okay track. And we also get the high energy, raw, aggressive metalcore tracks that are very awesome because they're loud, dystopian, ugly, sometimes very industrial and futuristic. Tracks like Broken Vision Rhythm, Gourd, and New Faces in the Dark are also highlights on the album. And then we have tracks like Red Room, which has a really dreary ambient first half, which builds up to a very ugly and monstrous second half with some loud, monstrous, beastly drums, which sounds incredibly awesome. But I think that's the only part in that track that I actually really enjoy. And we also have tracks like Two-Way Mirror and Screaming, which are basically completely reverby pop rock tracks that, again, reminds me a lot of Deftones. And especially for the track Screaming, I think the chord progressions are just really dated, and the track 451 Days is just this ambient track that doesn't really offer anything, not that special or all that outstanding of a sonic palette. The track Is It Really You is also a bit of a pop rock track with more of a post vibe, maybe more of a shoegazy vibe, and maybe too many layers of instrumentals on this thing. And we also have the title track and the track Heavy Is the Head, blah 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 blah. And both of these tracks are pretty one-dimensional metalcore tracks in my opinion, and they don't really differ all that much from the aggressive, violent, raw metalcore tracks I mentioned before, except maybe a little slower, a little more limited. And we have the track A Sad Cartoon, which isn't a terrible track. It sort of fuses the reverby pop rock elements and the aggressive, raw metalcore elements together again, but the transitions between these two elements is really awkward and jarring. So yeah, overall, I think this album has some hits, has some misses, and I don't think it's all that great of an album either. Kind of feeling a decent 6 on this thing. My favorite track here is, I don't know. I'm gonna say Broken Vision Rhythm is my favorite. And my least favorite is probably, I don't know either. Not a single track here is terrible in my opinion, but I guess the track Screaming is probably the track that I would skip the most. So yeah, overall, what are your thoughts on these albums? From 1 to 10, how much did you rate them? Like if you like them, hate if you hate them, and subscribe if you want more, and thanks for watching. Also, I will review the Lil Uzi Vert album, Eternal A Take, tomorrow, and I will not be able to review the next Weekend album, the Code Orange album, whatever album that comes next. I will not be able to review them at all because I need to focus on my exams. So, thanks for watching, and subscribe if you want more.